All right, let's talk some more takeaways about Penn State versus FIU because that scoreboard is extremely deceiving.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are locked on to Penn State football. Thank you so much for joining me on another edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, a live post-game show now that we are back safe and settled from Beaver Stadium. My name is Zach Seiko, and I am your host of the show as always. Thank you so much for the support on the channel. Really, I do genuinely mean that. Very close to 10,000 subscribers. Really appreciate each and every one of you. So this is going to be a little more of a relaxed post-game show. Depending on where the conversation takes us, it could be, half an hour, which is pretty standard, to an hour. If you have questions, comments, put them into the live chat. But this is just going to be reacting, some more takeaways, other thoughts that pop up after the fact, because in the moment, okay, this Penn State team did not look great today. They should have dominated FIU, but then hindsight's 2020, right? Where now we see Florida, not Florida International, Florida ends up getting upset by South Florida. Busy day for the state of Florida, right? And Clemson gets a major scare, but they win. West Virginia loses to another fellow MAC team in the Ohio Bobcats, right? So it's not that bad in the scheme of things for Penn State. So like I said, this is a very fan, listener, contributor-driven show. Okay, I'm happy to discuss and talk about anything related to the game, Big Ten, college football, anything. I know it's the sky is falling, but I think the coaches are looking at different schemes and people, and remember what happened the second game of last year and how it ended up. Steven, thank you so much for the comment. Thank you so much for joining the live show. In regard to last year, it's not as cut and dry as, FIU is just Bowling Green 2.0. I'll start there. Bowling Green was unique from the sense of still first year with Andy Kotelnicki, first year with Tom Allen, and the defense that they wanted to run was totally flipped over. It was flipped completely on its head when KJ Winston had left the game. And Bowling Green was a significantly better team than both FIU, Nevada, anybody else. That's probably one of the better. I would say it's comparable to Appalachian State from 2018 in that regard. These games happen. That is what I'm trying to point out, is that you have a Clemson versus Troy situation, okay, where some of these non-conference games will just sneak up on you. Penn State is trying a bunch of different things, so we bring it back to the present. Okay, so Bowling Green was a little more defined by new offensive system, new defensive system, not the best versions of it. I know this is fun to say when on the heels of, hey, this wasn't the greatest game from the offense, but Drew Aller, Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, this offensive line were not as good as they are now. And I know the tangible results don't actually say that, but this group is better than what that was last year at this time. Combine that with two new coordinators in week 2, off of the high of playing West Virginia on the road going into Morgantown. And, again, speaking of West Virginia, they lost to Ohio, right? Stephen makes a great point here. And I like to think that's how I'm looking at it, is that Penn State, people will scoff at James Franklin saying, we're trying some rotations and everything else. Also, this is something that popped up on my drive home. Does Penn State really want to, again, throw the kitchen sink at FIU? Or do they want to keep, show some wrinkles, but keep the game plan basic? You're not going to put your best foot forward when it comes to scheming, game planning. You are going to put a level 1, level 2 playbook together. If it works, see, Penn State is good enough to where, you're playing one of your worst days of football, or you don't have your best on one side of the football, it's still okay because we can win 34-0, but still leading 20-0. Again, they scored, those 2 touchdowns fairly late in the game. Definitely garbage time. I would say this game primarily stopped at 20-0. That is really that's why I say the scoreboard's deceiving. Sky is not falling. The core from the semifinal team is back, aside from Abdul Carter and Tyler Warren. They have those week 2 jitters. I look at this game as, hey, rainy, just some inclement weather, right? This isn't a game that just the 1-0 mentality is great, and I'm glad that they emphasize it because they need to, because then you get in situations where you don't have your best, and then you lose to an opponent you're not supposed to. In that same breath, though, these are human beings. Everyone's looking forward to the whiteout against Oregon. Nobody is interested in this non-conference schedule from the Penn State side of things. Of course, Penn State does need to win these games, but when I mean that generally speaking. The Big Ten conference slate, the playoff, this is about ironing out the wrinkles between teams that you are significantly better than. Nevada, FIU, Villanova next week. Am I expecting more of the same against Villanova? Not necessarily. Just because I think it's the level in competition that Penn State's just going to be so much better than Villanova, again, an FCS team. But I do see them being maybe a little more motivated to kind of try to prove it before going into the bye week. Penn State's just very conscious of, they play Oregon to open up the Big Ten conference slate. You can't afford to go 10-2 in this season. I don't think you can if you're Penn State. You can only afford to drop either of Ohio State and Oregon, and I guess preferably the Ohio State game if we had to pick one. So it's a long-winded answer to say, yes, I agree with the first comment from Steven. So again, looking for your questions, your comments, conversational, Q&A, open discussion. There's no such thing as a bad question. There's no such thing as a bad idea. We're kind of spitballing a lot here just to figure out where Penn State is headed. I'm still very glass half full when it comes to this team. National title, this did not change my thoughts. One bad game, and not by the defense, not by the collectively. This team was not bad collectively. It was a poor first half by the offense that has 3 brand new wide receivers. Tyler Warren, what was the tight end? That was the offense with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. In some sort of sense, Andy Kotelnicki's system is a little bit new, but there are plays where the offensive line isn't getting. The offensive line is still trying to gel, but they're going to gel quicker. Remember, that was a group last year that they were okay. They were middle of the road for the entirety of the season. Then it clicked in the Big Ten championship game. I think they're going to have that aha moment, hopefully in the Oregon game. But it would be nice but then, right? And go figure that it's Oregon all over again. That's my theory. That's kind of the best case scenario, though. And that doesn't mean that they're going to play perfect, but they're going to have some of these issues figured out. You're going to see a more in-depth playbook that just gives a lot of extra leverage for this Penn State team overall. It's a vanilla game plan against FIU, against Nevada. You're winning on sheer talent alone. All right, one comment down. Let's keep moving. Can the Drew Aller experience be over, please? Don't look at the Bo Pribula box score either, right? Just to add fuel to the fire. So I'm surprised we haven't seen that right out of the gate. We will see more of that Penn State chose the wrong quarterback, went with Drew Aller, and they should have went with Bo Pribula. Drew Aller is the better quarterback. I can say that. A lot of that has to do with game plan, scheme, game script. Missouri and Kansas turned into an offensive shootout. It demanded that Bo Pribula kept going and having the passing volume and getting into rhythm and going back and forth with that Kansas Jayhawks team. The playbook was also a lot deeper for that Missouri team. And Bo Pribula is a good quarterback. Drew Aller would put up the same numbers in that situation, maybe even better. It's hard to say. I think Bo was, again, I'm going to pull up stats and stuff to kind of look around, keep an eye on some ball games. I think Bo, off the top of my head, was 30 of 39. Let's see if I can find that game. There we go. 30 of 39. So I had that one right. 334 yards, 3 touchdowns. I feel like Drew Aller is also able to do that in that given situation. Aside from a couple of turnovers, he did that against USC, right? So the Aller experience, it hasn't been, this has been a fair assessment of it, is that it's, I think Penn State fans, and even me to an extent back when, was that most people maybe assumed, or maybe some, okay, there was a substantial amount of people, or enough to say that Drew Aller was thought to be maybe the same type of experience that Trevor Lawrence gave Clemson. I think that's fair. That those were the subtle expectations that, oh, this is the 5-star quarterback. This is the top tier prospect. He should be able to lead them to multiple national championships. And that didn't happen. So and not everyone's going to go on the record and say, yes, I thought Drew Aller was Trevor Lawrence 2.0 coming out of college. That's not what I'm trying to say here. I'm trying to say is that Aller would have been able to will his team to victory similarly to Trevor Lawrence during those prime Clemson years. And that wasn't the case. So I think there's just kind of a disappointment factor that Aller has not been the consensus #1 overall NFL draft pick, because after his freshman year, everybody viewed Trevor Lawrence as a future #1 overall draft pick. How many other quarterbacks can we say, and what? I didn't watch Peyton Manning play in college, but over the past 2 decades of following this and trying to comprehend it as a kid, but now understanding the game a lot better, how many quarterbacks in college did we know were going to be a surefire first round or #1 overall quarterback from the word go for 4 consecutive years? So I think that's when I see that, oh, I want to move on from Drew Aller, or Drew's exhausting, or he's not a good QB, anything like that, it's because Aller carries that 5-star pedigree. It kind of is the nature of the territory. And it's just disappointing because he's not another version of Trevor Lawrence, but there aren't many versions of that in college football, if any, especially over the past 2 decades. Like I said, I can't speak to how Peyton Manning did in the late 90s because I was 2-3 years old and I did not watch that, and I have no recollection of it. Even though I can watch documentaries on it, I still don't have that same comprehension of seeing it firsthand. Should we be concerned with this team's performance in the first 2 weeks with how Oregon and Ohio State have looked so far? With Ohio State, so I'm going to speak respectively to the teams. So I will be honest, my confidence level in both of those games has taken a step back, not because of Penn State, but because what Oregon and Ohio State have shown. So it's more about buying into the respect of Oregon and Ohio State as the opponent. My opinion's not really any different of Penn State. I believe this team has the capability of going undefeated. I think they still can. But Oregon looks a lot better than I anticipated. Ohio State looks a lot better than I anticipated. And that's not a significant jump, but you kind of go from that, okay, are they there? I had them in the middle of tier 1 and tier 2, where they're just on the outside looking in, and now both of them kind of move up to, they're firmly in tier 1 and they might be at the top, and both of them might be at the top of tier 1. So that's how I view it. In regards to Oregon, in this game against Oklahoma State, it's a Power 4 school, Big 12. Oklahoma State is not the Oklahoma State that people remember. Starting QB, really good starting QB, at least somebody that would have been respectable, that was going to have a breakout season for them. Injured, might be out I think he's out for the season. He's definitely out. We'll use Penn State verbiage, long-term bumps and bruises for Oklahoma State's quarterback. The Cowboys were predicted to finish lower in the Big 12. Oregon definitely threw most of the kitchen sink at Oregon, or excuse me, Oregon threw most of the kitchen sink at Oklahoma State, because that's a Power 4 team. You were going to give them that due respect. That is a Mike Gundy-led team. His days might not be, they might be counting down the days to regime change in Oklahoma State, because I just don't think it's working with Mike Gundy. He just hasn't adapted to the times. It's the same thing with Florida, right? Billy Napier should be finding cardboard boxes and looking on LinkedIn and all the different employment sites, because, wow. So my confidence in Oregon as a team, my assessment of them has changed. My assessment of Ohio State, which I did not think would be as elite defensively. I thought it would take them some time, and they shut down the number 1 Texas Longhorns at the time. My opinion of Penn State, it's no different. Are there things that they need to work on? Yes. But again, a couple of bad plays or bad drives, communication, it's not a lack of talent. It is not a talent issue. It is simply communication. And Penn State, as the first comment pointed out, which I will continue to do, is trying different things. And they are not going to show everything against feeble competition. So it looks like with the comments, we're going to be able to do this for an hour, right? So we'll take our first break here and jump right back into the comment section. Again, this is a comment-driven show. Questions, answers, clarity that everybody's looking for, and just talk some Penn State football and everything in between. We're going to talk Big Ten. We're going to talk college football landscape as well. That is all coming up next here on this live postgame show here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this live show is brought to you by DoorDash. So the weekend is here, and it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, when you can save more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most, so let's break it down. I'm going to go with a wide receiver again. For Penn State, I'll go with Devontae Ross. He delivered in a big way, because we know that receiver has not been the position of strength for Penn State. Last week, I said it was Trevor Pena and Kyron Hudson. This week, I'm going to go with Devontae Ross, just because he solidifies that trio. A one-handed catch, pass interference by the defensive back. Devontae Ross is not known as that catch in traffic type of receiver, but made that kind of play. He came through, no hesitation, no delay. And if you've been following along, you know that this performance is not a fluke. And just like Devontae Ross delivered for Penn State, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You can save every Saturday that you order. Stack it up over all season. You could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Okay, so we have so far the comments to continue the show and carry it past the normal half hour that we do here routinely on this podcast. Again, I want to thank everyone so much. If you are not subscribed, if you are new to the channel, I would really appreciate if you became an everydayer and subscribed to the YouTube channel. Very close to 10,000 subscribers. Without your help, none of this would be possible. So thank you so much. Okay, it's not about that. Drew Aller looks exactly the same. He's still missing easy open throws. How are we having jitters against FIU? If you're not a mobile quarterback, you better be accurate. Okay, so we can talk through, I know the plays that you're referring to. There's the swing pass to Nicholas Singleton. There's the moon ball. Is that what we're going to call it here collectively? The moon ball that he's trying to throw to Devontae Ross. So it's kind of a double whammy, and this actually might upset some Penn State fans more when I get to my explanation of those air balls that he tries to drop into the breadbasket rather than kind of throwing with just some basic arc. Okay, you want it delivered. You don't want this multiple. It takes 2 to 3 business days to get there. Okay, that's what people are looking for. In Aller's case on different, is Aller perfect? No, I don't expect him to complete every single pass, but I do want to point out that it is not his fault every single time, even if he does say so in a press conference. This is my opinion. Okay, there's a chance that I might be wrong. Aller is not going to throw Singleton under the bus and say, yeah, he made a bad move, or he was not on the same page as me. As the veteran captain quarterback, you are going to say, it's on me, it's my fault, I missed an easy throw. A lot of Drew's throws are timing and spot related. They don't go directly to the receiver. They're supposed to go to a place. They are supposed to go to a spot more often than not. In regards to that Singleton swing pass, which is just a quick out, what I'm seeing is, how is Aller so inaccurate from 5 yards out? Okay, so you might, and that's the thing, some people are going to believe and say that Aller is that inaccurate. He's not a legitimate NFL draft prospect. Take him in day 3. I don't believe that, because we see throws like the one to Kyron Hudson in the last game. The throw to Devontae Ross, not the moon ball, but the one where he hits him in the corner of the end zone, and it's on a rope. When Aller misses a simple 5-yard swing pass, why is that? Why is he missing a routine pass like that? Is it because Singleton's not in the right spot? Is it because he's going too horizontally and not enough vertically? Because when I look at that play, I think Singleton's supposed to get more of a running start so Aller can hit him in stride, and then he's able to run 10 yards at least, and then maybe you get more, and then that becomes an explosive play. I think that that's a very complicated way of looking at a 5-yard incompletion that just looked like a boneheaded throw from Drew Aller, but that's what I think. Aller is inaccurate from time to time, but I also think that he's throwing to a spot on other plays, and these are very precise, timed throws, passes, however you want to do it. And I don't think him and Singleton were on the same page. I think Singleton was supposed to be a little more upfield. Aller's throwing to a spot because he thinks, my running back's going to be here, so let me lead him. And Singleton is basing, and that's these little mistakes when you are not on the same page are frustrating, especially if they're frustrating for you. They're frustrating for Singleton and Aller because they played together for 4 years. And I think they can fix it, because you do that against FIU, you can correct that for Oregon. So that's how I see it, is that a lot of Aller's passes are timing related. They're spot related. If a receiver is not in a spot, it's to prevent turnovers, interceptions. So it's like, man, Aller was really inaccurate on such an easy throw because maybe the receiver wasn't in the right spot. That's not always the case, but I think that's some of the case and more than people realize. On the moon ball, okay, so this is where we're going to get a little somewhat controversial. He's being told to do that. In simple terms, he's being coached to do that. James Franklin has gone on the record with this. Penn State wants to give, and I think it's interesting, you do that with Devontae Ross. Penn State is looking to avoid overthrows. They would rather have a 50-50 jump ball to give the wide receiver a chance to come down with it, as opposed to a low percentage throw where Aller accidentally overthrows the player or whatever have you, or it leads to an interception. So Penn State is actually trying to get him to hover the football so that the wide receiver has a better chance with it. You're probably going to disagree with that, but Franklin has said that they prefer Aller doing that where he lofts the football. That makes sense to me for Kyron Hudson. It doesn't for Devontae Ross. Devontae Ross is going to be the fastest football player on the field at a given time 9 times out of 10, maybe even more than that. When you go up against Ohio State and Oregon, I think that's up for debate. But everybody else, Devontae Ross is probably the fastest player. Throw the football and say, go get it. kind of thing when it comes to a speedy wide receiver like him. But that is why Aller is throwing those lofty passes. It's not because he can't or he doesn't know how, because we see the throw in the back of the end zone to Ross. Oh, what? That's a completely different throw. Yeah, Aller can make them, but he's being told to throw those air balls. So that's how you should interpret Aller a little. I give him a little more grace there because it's not just as, oh, he can't make those throws. No, he can make those throws. Sometimes it's not as, it's not as black and white. It's not as cut and dry as, that was a bad pass. No, wide receiver and quarterback weren't on the same page. Wide receiver and or running back and quarterback weren't on the same page. Crazy how we play sloppy and still win 34-0. Just goes to show you how good this football team is, looking at this glass half full. And it was just one position group for one half. And Penn State, again, they are not interested in winning by 1,000 points. If they were to win 10-0 against FIU, they consider that the same as beating them 1,000-0. If that, let's keep it realistic, 100-0. They defeat FIU 100-0. They look at it the same way as defeating them 10-0. You don't need to do that, and I don't want them to do that. I would rather them win ugly against FIU and save all of their best plays and motivation and whatever else for the games that are more consequential, that do matter more. And I know that you need to win those games because if you lose to FIU, you don't get anywhere. I completely understand that. You lose that game, you are out of the season, right? You don't get to the playoffs. So that's why there is that 1-0 mentality. But we are human. There is going to be more juice. This is across the board. This is for the Penn State fan base, people covering the sport. I have more interest covering Penn State and Oregon in the whiteout game than I do Penn State and FIU at noon. Okay? We're all on the same page with that. The football team, you as a fan, as a spectator, and me covering the team and talking about them. Okay, there's more angles, there's more storylines, there's more at stake, right? James Franklin in the big game, Oregon in the whiteout. Oh, here's FIU with noon kickoff on Big Ten Network. Oh, you forgot the game was going on, right? Outside of this show or following Penn State coverage, who knew how many people were looking forward to that game? But the defense played very well. Aside from, and this is where James Franklin points to, so when you say, okay, we played sloppy, Penn State played sloppy. The offense played sloppy. The defense was actually pretty good. Special teams were pretty good. The defense, though, in particular, and this is what people scoff at. Well, James Franklin says that we're rotating in a lot of people on defense. On defense, they're rotating tons of people. Defensive end, defensive tackle, not so much linebacker. Not so much linebacker. I guess Keon Wiley is that rotational player. Cornerback, safety. Oh my goodness. Other than linebacker, they're rotating everybody and their brother into this, in and out of this lineup. And Penn State still shut out an FIU team that has a preseason all-conference quarterback nominee, a three-headed monster at running back in respect to the Conference USA. That is a really good running back trio for that level of competition. And Penn State still shut them out. Forced turnovers. So the offense is the one that should be critiqued because, well, the defense was still pretty average because they let up a few chunk plays and they allowed drives to extend. They didn't give up any points. That's what I'm focused on. Oh, they let up an inconvenient third down. If those third down conversions and fourth down conversions had led to points, I'd be a little more frustrated. You just made your job more difficult. Deny Dennis Sutton or whoever else was on the field. You just made your day a little more uncomfortable, difficult. You just had to stay out on the football field longer instead of, hey, we got off the field sooner out of this drive. If that translates, you give up a fourth down conversion at midfield, and then that translates into 3 or 7 points. Yeah, because it's consequential. No, you just ended the drive at a later time. It didn't translate into anything. It didn't convert into points. Special teams. I mean, Gabe Wosu booted a 70-yard punt and flipped the entire football field. That isn't a one-off play. That is what Gabe Wosu can do routinely, and which is why he overtook a former captain in Riley Thompson, a former all-conference player, captain in Riley Thompson. Gabe Wosu can just punt the ball 70 yards, doesn't need a lucky bounce or anything. They pinned the football inside of the 1. I think that was at the half-yard line. Punting unit is better. Kick return unit is better. Punt return. So punt coverage, punt return, kick return. Kickoff, I guess, needs a little work, right? We saw Gabe Wosu kick 2 out of bounds. That's unacceptable. But you have Ryan Barker. Okay, if he's not going to handle kickoff duties, if he's totally just now the superstar punter, then you make that substitution. Barker's automatic. Other than the blocked field goal, Barker has not missed. He's automatic. He's reliable. You can trust him. So it was just the offense in the first half, because then they clicked. It wasn't perfect in the third quarter, but they were moving the football. They were getting those bigger chunk plays. Katron Allen late in the game broke off a near 70-yard run. Finished with almost 150 yards. Also, I do want to go back on the record that I said that Katron Allen would be the one to set the rushing record and not Nicholas Singleton, because they're both really good running backs. One isn't better than the other. It is truly who's having the hotter day. But because Singleton is going to be so much more involved when we get to Big Ten conference play, we will see Singleton more involved in the passing game. That's going to eat those count as touches in the scheme of things. So it really comes down to statistics. That, yeah, Singleton might end up having more all-purpose yards than Katron Allen this season, but Allen should, if both of them are healthy for a full schedule, Allen's going to have more rushes and more carries like he did today. Now, the one breakout play, the one long run, Singleton can do that, and we've obviously seen him do that. But don't think for a moment, Katron Allen is running back number 2. Singleton is miles ahead, and Allen's a day 3 NFL draft pick, and Singleton's a day 1 as a first round pick. No, these guys are very close. They're just different. And because of that difference, you're going to see Singleton catch the football a lot more, which will eat into his potential rushing total, which is fine by me if it translates into Penn State wins. But just know that, do not be surprised if Katron Allen ends up winning. It ends up being is crowned the all-time leading rusher in Penn State history. Do not let that surprise you. It shouldn't, because Katron Allen is really good at football, and he's going to have the volume there from the statistics. All right, we'll take another brief break and continue to go through the comments section here, as we're just going to keep churning along. We're going to do this for an hour, right? Let's take this all the way up to 9:30, continue to talk about Penn State. You want to talk about Florida? Losing to South Florida? Clemson getting a serious scare from Troy as 31-point favorites? Or just more Penn State? Because this is a Penn State show. So it's just a casual way to chat, share thoughts about what we saw today in college football. And it's coming up next here on this live post-game edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is also brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than just simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive. And that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, beyond style and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. As an athlete focuses on every detail themselves, Mazda does the same. From metallic accents to hand-stitched Napa leather, you can feel it the moment you get behind the wheel. The smooth handling, intuitive controls, standard all-wheel drive in every crossover SUV. So whether it's a quick drive to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda makes even everyday drives feel special. It's the small details that make the big plays. And just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Okay, back into the comments section. Let's see where I left off. Again, any takeaways that you have, let's discuss them, both positive and negative, right? The concerns that I have are slowly being fixed. That's kind of the frame of mind. So here's the frame of mind that I come from. I don't need Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen don't need to prove anything to me. If they have a bad day, they have a bad day. If the offensive line, same thing. People are a little more skeptical of the offensive line, I think, because in the past, Penn State fans have been hurt by lackluster offensive line play, or it just hasn't been good for the most part, because that takes time to build. You need the depth. You need the talent. Phil Troutwine has done an incredible job. But because of what I saw against Oregon, Boise State, SMU, Notre Dame in that playoff stretch, and that entire group is back, that same group that gave that production, that is why I have belief in the offensive line that they'll figure out communication issues. It's not a talent issue. It's simple mistakes that they can actually fix. You can't really build talent. They say you get better in the off season. From a talent standpoint, that's what you do to refine your skill. Yes, you can get better over the course of the season by doing the reps and everything else, but you don't have time in the middle of the season to do that, because it can win or it can lose you football games if you don't handle that. So that's where I come from, that frame of mind of, okay, well, the offensive line doesn't concern me, or Allen and Singleton did not have 200 yards apiece, because I've seen what they can do when they're at their best. And they honestly, sometimes they are still at their best even on bad days. They're still really good. The position groups like defensive line, defensive tackle, which I harped on and said, I don't know if they have the depth to be a national. I'm confident they're a national championship team, but this group could be the reason they don't win or they don't go deep. My opinion is starting. That's the thing. Now defensive tackle is starting to be the least of my worries. For example, to see Ty Blanding just push people around, other Division I college football players, just push them back into the quarterback. Eni White, who has played defensive end his whole career, is finding a home at defensive tackle. Deion Barnes is one of the best, if not, he is starting to, I think it's because he hasn't been in college football enough that we can't do this, but he very well might be the best defensive line coach in college football. The proof is in the production to go from Abdul Carter, who was a linebacker, never played defensive end, to a top 3 NFL draft pick. And then Chaz Coleman, who has not played a lot of defensive end, period, is an 18-year-old true freshman, did not enroll early, and is going to be a key rotational playmaker, maybe a co-starter down the stretch of the season alongside Zariah Fisher, who we just don't know if is 100%. Denai Dennis Sutton is playing at an All-American level to a point where FIU is triple teaming him. Zane Durant, a former 3-star, is probably going to be, I'd say, because, NFL draft projections are complicated, I see him as a first-round talent. He'll probably end up being a second-round talent. Problems with his height or concerns about his height, something like that. I'm not sure. Again, I don't speak with NFL scouts routinely enough to know what their overall opinion is of Durant. So that might be an issue. Well, you said he was a first-round talent, and he ended up going in round 3. Again, I'm not concerned about his height. Some scouts who get paid millions of dollars might be. Okay, so I have a little more credence with my opinion, or I have a little more flexibility with my opinion. I don't have to be perfectly spot on with that draft projection. Bottom line, though, is that Deion Barnes is a darn good defensive line coach. And it's not just good, he's great. He's elite. How many people did I just rattle off? It's not just Abdul Carter. It's Carter, it's Chop Robinson, it's Zane Durant, it's Denai Dennis Sutton, and now you're seeing everybody progress. You're seeing everybody get better. Ty Blanding is better. Alonzo Ford transferred in from Old Dominion and has been consistent when he's healthy. Ty Blanding has gotten better. Eni White moves to defensive tackle and is giving you at least better production. I didn't know if he would play this year. I didn't know if he'd be able to crack the rotation at defensive end. And then when they moved into defensive tackle, I said, that's probably a year-long plan. They're just going to scrap this, essentially redshirt him and move him to defensive tackle and hope that he is a 2 deep next year. And he's playing. And he's playing and he's giving you solid production. He's giving you better than what most of us would have expected. So when I look at defensive tackle, defensive end, Chaz Coleman is trending in the right direction. All those defensive tackles that I named are trending in the right direction. My concerns about what could truly, because Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton aren't going to hold Penn State back from a national title run. The offensive line's not going to hold Penn State back from a national title run. Those questionable liabilities could. At one point in time, we were talking about safety. Safety could have been a liability. It's just Zach Key Wheatley. Antoine Belgrave Shorter becomes a starter. Dejon Lane rotates in a ton. King Mack is rotating in a ton. A safety group that had one player that you knew you were going to get significant results from, but you didn't know what you had in ABS. How is King Mack going to do after a down year at Alabama? Dejon Lane, questionable when it comes to tackling. Is he going to have a sophomore slump or a sophomore breakout season? Kenny Wosley emerges. That's where, again, the depth. Linebacker, jury's still out. I would say that group continues to kind of cycle down because, okay, I like what you have in Amari Campbell, Anthony Speck, or not Anthony Specka, Tony Rojas, Amari Campbell, as I mentioned, at that transfer spot, and Dom DeLuca. It's because Jim Knowles has said, I don't trust anybody else at this point. Anthony Speck is good, but I don't trust anybody after those first 3. So that's where you need to look. Are the groups that we identified as potential liabilities, are they trending forwards or backwards? Defensive end. Chaz Coleman is trending forward. I still need to see more from Jalen Harvey, Malachi Williams, and Yvonne Kamaju falls into that category as well. Deny Dennis Sutton if he is not available, if he were to get hurt, or if Zariah Fisher cannot come back and be 100%. That's going to be concerning. And Chaz Coleman is not enough. You need somebody else. You need Kamaju, you need Harvey, you need Malachi Williams, you need somebody. I would not rule out the possibility of Deshaun Burnett or I just had his name. Another true freshman, Daniel Jennings. Daniel Jennings, I could see another true freshman defensive end because it's not final. They could be a role player or a practice squad player one day. Again, Chaz Coleman is now becoming somewhat of a co-starter alongside Zariah Fisher until he's back to 110%. He'll be that third defensive end after Deny Dennis Sutton and Zariah Fisher when they are both healthy. But Jennings, Burnett, maybe they're yellow lights, and we're just not seeing a lot of them right now until they prove it in practice. And if they do, then the defensive end room gets that much better. Hey, it worked for Coleman. I'm not going to rule it out so there's no final judgment. There is no final decision made just because we haven't seen a player or two. Oh, that means they're redshirting. They're never going to get in. No, we don't know that because they could emerge in the final weeks. And they play all 4 games, then their red shirts burned. And now they're an integral part of the offense or the defense going into the postseason. So it's fortunate, a good thing that postseason games don't count against your red shirt. So Penn State very well might redshirt a lot of these true freshmen, and then they play a bunch if they trust them in those postseason games. Big Ten championship, college football playoff, obviously. Okay, so I didn't get back into the comments. I had a lot to talk about there with my thoughts on being critical of groups that I trust and being skeptical of groups that I don't trust, but I'm seeing evidence to lead me to believe that, I should be more confident in these position groups. Think we should just keep the offensive game plan simple next week and just make sure the team is on the same page. If these issues continue to the next game, I'd be really worried. And it's not going to be more of the same from a game plan standpoint. It is going to be more of the same. You are not going to empty the cabinet for Villanova, especially right before Oregon. You are going to save a lot of stuff. Penn State has done this in the past where they are going to have they'll show a couple of wrinkles again to put it on film, but they are truly not going to show bread and butter type of plays that they know will work. I think back to when Penn State destroyed Michigan. Was that 2017? Probably 2017. I was a student. I was a student at that game. Penn State ended up winning 42-10. Maybe it was 42-13 off the top of my head. And for most of the season, Penn State, kept a pretty good read option RPO situation with Trace McSorley, Saquon Barkley. And then they just roll out this wrinkle where Saquon slides over to quarterback and takes the direct snap. Michigan had no idea what to do. Those are the things that you should expect. They could run 3 running back setups, diamond formations, full house, fullback type of situations. We've seen some of it. We saw the running back wildcat where Singleton and Allen were out of shotgun, Aller split out wide, and we already saw that. We were anticipating that. But what if you factor Cam Wallace into that, or you put 3 tight ends out there, and then you have that backfield, and Drew Aller's off to the sideline, or even comes out for the play? I don't know, but they can do that, and I'm expecting it at some point where Kotelnicki is just, here's 4 tight ends, and Singleton and Allen are QB1 and QB2, RB1 and RB2. Stop it. The possibilities are endless. So they're going to show some of that, but they're not going to use all of it. I agree that Drew misses gimme passes, and I'm so tired of the first half body language with him. I agree with that. I do think that Aller was supposed to be this new confident player a season ago, and there still is an element of he's uncertain with himself at points in times. You could frame that a different way in that maybe he's just overly critical of himself. Offensive line thinks that Drew Aller apparently is Mr. No Nonsense. If you haven't watched that, it was the CBS special with the for most of the offensive line, the 7 offensive linemen that Penn State's primarily going to use this season. Cooper Cousins is scared of Drew, and I mean that lightly. I mean that in a joking way, but there was one instance where they described him. They said, Aller let you have it one time for a mistake in the USC game. And he's like, I never thought I'd be yelled at by Drew like that. So Aller, I think Aller just expresses his frustration in not the best way. It does show uncertainty. It shows a lack of confidence. And your quarterback has to be an assassin. Nothing phases them. Good, bad, or indifferent, nothing phases them. And I think at times Aller is a little too emotional in the wrong direction. Okay, I don't know that there's a right direction there. You can get over emotional in the right direction, so to speak, and it can lead to bad things. All right, so we got more comments. I see your comments. Appreciate you joining the live show. We are going to take another quick timeout. When we come back, continue to address Q&A, thoughts on this game, thoughts about Oregon, Ohio State. Maybe we even get to the Big Ten Conference. We'll see. We'll see about all of it. That is coming up next here on this live postgame show here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's episode is brought to you by Upside. Hey, Penn State fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Well, stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code FOOTBALL. That is code FOOTBALL, and you'll get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You could make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. At first, hey, I thought this was too good to be true, but it is totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or any gift card for Amazon and other brands. So don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code FOOTBALL. That is code FOOTBALL for a limited time 25-cent per gallon bonus. Promo code FOOTBALL. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. And this live show is also brought to you by FanDuel. NFL season is here. It is back, and FanDuel is making sure you are ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. That is right. for everything. NFL, college football. If you want to bet on Penn State, well, they haven't been covering, but you can use it on every sport that is available on FanDuel. FanDuel makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your favorite team or you're just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, it's the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays, and I'd include your Saturdays in there as well. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. And remember, new customers, when you place your first $5 bet, if it wins, you get $300 in bonus bets. That is over at FanDuel.com and the FanDuel app. All right, appreciate the dedicated podcast, the fans of the podcast, fans of Penn State sports. We're almost at an hour here. I have to drink water live on the show. I normally don't. I normally don't do that. I don't have to. But we're going for an hour. I did a show with Zane Bransfield, associate producer, over at Beaver Stadium on the football field. If you haven't already, go check that out. Again, it kind of goes back to the similar theme here, is that I don't need to sell out on this team. I look at it as most often simple mistakes. So here, okay. Here's how I look at it. That okay, if there was nothing, the nothingness, it's the nothingness of the liability groups that I'm looking for. So if Chaz Coleman wasn't doing anything, if Ty Blanding wasn't doing anything, again, mostly on the defensive line, right? If Amari Campbell wasn't adjusting accordingly, or we didn't have the safety production, King Mack and Antoine Belgrave Shorter and Dejon Lane, those guys, then this is where I'd be like, okay, I don't know if Penn State has it. I don't know, because again, it's kind of already rehashing what I said, but in a different way to communicate it. I don't need Singleton and Allen to prove anything to me because I've already seen enough from them. Singleton ran for he had 3 touchdowns against Notre Dame in the college football playoff semifinal. I know what his best looks like. I know what his talent level is. He makes a simple communication error with Drew is not going to make me say, this guy's a bad football player. This guy doesn't know what he's doing, or you should be concerned. No, it's about looking at, okay, where are those question marks? Where are those liabilities? Are they doing things to prove me otherwise? I know what Drew can do. Nick, K-Trime. I've been impressed. Again, Kyron Hudson being a leading receiver. Trevor Pena. Devontae Ross now. They were meeting my expectations of this is going to be a pretty difficult trio to stop when it comes to the passing game. Luke Reynolds gets involved a little earlier than I thought, right? Those are the things that you want to look for. I don't need the offensive line to prove anything to me because I know what they are capable of when they are at their best. They are working through some small communication miscues. It is not a talent thing, okay? So back to the comments. And maybe you disagree. We can hash that out. We can argue. We can debate. We don't need to argue about this, right? It's college football. We can debate, right? Let's see here. Do you people remember the cheaters 2 years ago that went undefeated, but had not looked dominant in the early cupcake games? Offensive line gave up sacks. We are going 16-0, 17-0. So you left out one game there. If they go 16-0, they got to get to the 17th game. So are you saying, Kevin, are you saying that they lose in the national title? No, I'm kidding. I promise I'm kidding. But yes, Michigan did not. I would point more specifically because Michigan, obviously, Connor Stallions, the cheating accusations, all that stuff. I'd point to Oregon. Does anybody remember Oregon's first couple of games last season? Boise State gave them a run for their money. FCS Idaho nearly beat them at Oregon at Autzen Stadium. Penn State beats FIU 34-0. They beat Nevada 46-11. Well, it wasn't 56-11. Well, it wasn't 41-0. So therefore, this team is not national championship caliber. Okay, that's fine. I can understand being critical. It's about, here's where a lot of this stems from, the criticism, because again, I don't let the simple miscues define my interpretation of the team, of the player. That is not going to make me cast an overall judgment, again, as I pointed out multiple times. I think the Penn State fans or people that cover the team, whether that's through social media or, through actual credentialed outlets, there is skepticism. We've been let down before. People that just, I want Penn State to do well, okay? But as a podcast host covering the team, I'm not going to be, I can't go cheer in the stands for them, right? But I want them to do well. And when I was a fan of them, I've been disappointed, and so have all of you. Oh, they're so close to knocking off Ohio State in 2017. Nope. Oh, 2018. Nope. Well, surely they'll pick back up and they'll get it right. You got the 5-star quarterback. Nope. So the same movie has played out too many times against Penn State. And this is where all this stems from, that basic mistakes against FIU or not having that same dominant victory, therefore lead to, well, they're just going to be 10-2 again. They're not going to beat Oregon. They're not going to beat Ohio State. That's what that frame of mind is. So, and that's understandable when James Franklin teams have not delivered on those games that fans just say, please, one time. SMU doesn't count. Boise State doesn't count. They don't. Everyone looks to Notre Dame and Oregon and Ohio State most recently, and then Ohio State and Michigan. Those bowl games don't count. Even though they're impressive. Penn State has plenty of bowl wins in a James Franklin tenure. They don't matter to most fans. When everybody talks about the big games and that Penn State can't win the big game, we don't classify those bowl games where Penn State is favored. We don't classify SMU and Boise State in that same category because they were favored. That's what they were expected to do. We expected them to beat a top 10 team because we knew they were better than them. When it's a toss-up, when they're an underdog, Penn State fans have been let down too many times over the course of the past decade. So it's understandable, from my point of view, to look at it and say, that concerns me, that makes me cautious. Oregon almost put up 70 points against Oklahoma State. The same movie is starting to play all over again. Maybe it does, because that's a possibility. There's a possibility that Penn State loses to Oregon. I think Penn State should be and stay favored against Oregon. Again, my opinion of Ohio State has changed, so my confidence level in that game has gone towards the Buckeyes. Again, that's a toss-up in my mind. If Penn State's playing its best on that given day, they can win. There's not significant differences that make me say, oh, Ohio State's going to win by 2 touchdowns, or even if they're not at their best, Penn State's going to lose more often than not. No, that is truly a 50-50 game in my mind. Against Oregon, it's not a 50-50 game, but it's starting to trend back towards that. I thought that was okay. This is a strong Penn State victory. They should win decisively. Oregon's changing my opinion a little bit there, but not too much. I think Penn State wins that game again. Out of 100 times, probably 60, 70 of them, 7 out of 10 times, okay, to simplify it. That's how I'm looking at those. All right, let's get back into the comments. I've rambled so much, and it's a lot to it. It's good because I just kind of get to, throw out all the stuff that's in my brain to talk about this from the storylines and the matchup perspective. Okay, so this one, I talked about this with Zane, just kind of on and off the air. We might have mentioned it in the immediate post-game recap. That ball went right through Khalil Dinkin's hands. That was not Drew Aller. That was right where it needed to be. He threw it over. He had to hover it over the linebacker because the linebacker would have tipped it and might have intercepted it. It was an easy. It wasn't an easy, but it was a routine catch for Dinkins. He did not make the play. He needed to make the play. His passes are just prayers for a pass interference. You could look at it that way to an extent. When going back to our moonball discourse, that's what he's that's Penn State is looking for that. They want to give the receiver an opportunity, a greater opportunity to come down with the football because hey, here's what that tells me. That means they trust Kyron Hudson, they trust Trevor Pena, and they trust Devontae Ross to go win that 50-50 battle on a 40, 50, 60-yard deep pass. They would rather have an underthrow as opposed to an overthrow. I think of some plays where Amari Evans was running wide open, and I know Amari Evans is at Washington right now, but when he was wide open, Penn State or Drew would still underthrow it because then it now becomes a touchdown. It's a guaranteed touchdown by letting him sit and wait for the football as opposed to an accidental overthrow, and then you get no points out of it. So that's what Penn State is trying to scheme or coach up in what they're doing. Let's see. Singleton has missed at least 3 big runs in this game. He is not seeing the blocking in the running lanes. Good. No, he's not seeing them as well. I actually have some thoughts on that. So I'm glad I found that comment because I saw it was earlier. I kind of scroll up and down to make sure that I don't miss anything. So I already kind of put my 2 cents out there as far as why are Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton not picking up where they left off with the playoff run. Stan Drayton. And I don't mean that as a point of fault. I mean that as a point of transition. When Abdul Carter moved to defensive end, and he had 2 awful games in week 1 and week 2, and everybody said, move him to linebacker. Penn State needs linebacker help. Abdul Carter, the defensive end experiment. It's failed. It's done. It's over with. Pack it in. Okay. And then Abdul Carter eventually became the best edge rusher in college football and a top 3 NFL draft pick. Okay. I'm not trying to project that for Singleton and Allen, but I do want to point out that a change in coaching. So this needs to be emphasized more, that Stan Drayton is reteaching. Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen are somewhat relearning the running back position, and there is a significant knowledge gap that they need to close because they are really good athletes. They are really good running backs, but they're not necessarily the best versions of themselves as football players. So that is the bridge that Stan Drayton is trying to build with Singleton and Allen. That is going to take time. So the same experiment with Abdul Carter Rome wasn't built in one day. That was going to take, look how quickly it went from, okay, 2 games, we need to move him back, to after 4, it was, whoa, this is the best decision ever. This is the same type of experience where I think Singleton is going to take a few steps back, and Katron Allen, to an extent, we haven't seen it as much so far, but they're going to regress a little bit to spring that much further forward. Sometimes you have to take a couple steps back to move more forward, and that's how I'm looking at this. Singleton and Allen did not get worse. They did not become bad football players. They are learning and working on new things that are only going to make them better, but they're going to go through growing pains to get to that better version of themselves. That's how I view it. Stan Drayton is a mastermind when it comes to coaching running backs. He's been a part of multiple national championship teams. You don't have all the time in the world, but I trust that he will be able to crack the code and it will click. It's just another light switch in the head of Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen for them to reach their full maximum potential. So Singleton's working through some things. He will see it on film. Because how did Singleton get worse? How did he take a step backward? He trains every single day. He's not getting worse. He's working through new elements of the running back position that he's never had before with J1 Sider. And that was the hope, that if they brought in somebody like Stan Drayton, they would be able to have these types of things. We're over an hour. I'm going to keep going. Why not? Right. But those are my thoughts on Singleton and Allen, not resuming what they had done a season ago. Let's see. At least the young defensive line players look good. Chaz Coleman and Eni White with their first sacks. Did I miss something with White? Again, maybe that's just, I didn't know if he got his first sack with Penn State. Oh, he did. Okay, so I missed that. Maybe I was going down to the tunnel when that happened. But that's my point, is Anai White is giving you production when none of us knew if he was going to be able to even be a rotational contributor this season. And he's performing above expectations. Chaz Coleman is performing above expectations. Probably internally, both internally at Penn State and then externally with the media and fans alike. That's what I'm seeing, because I did not have any expectations for White this season. And so and I don't mean that to be so critical and so harsh, but I did not see him racking up these stats because I thought, hey, a move to defensive tackle, how's that going to work out? He's never played that. He's coming off an injury season at Texas A&M. He's moving over from defensive end. What's going on? And now we're seeing that this was the correct move, similar to an Abdul Carter. Similar move, right? Switch positions, become a better player kind of thing. Okay, I agree. Remember in the second quarter when Kyron Hudson made a huge block and the offensive line blew the whole left side up and Singleton went outside for 7 yards when he should have cut inside. That's also something that's refreshing. I take mostly that Kyron Hudson is a really good blocker away from that. You need that on the boundaries. Wide receiver blocking was abysmal in 2023, which is why Penn State didn't have the success it could have in the ground game and ultimately there were a lot of elements there, but part of it led to the demise of Mike Yurcich because he couldn't scheme around that. He couldn't coach around that. So Kyron Hudson's a breath of fresh air in the fact that, and same thing with Trevor Pena, that they will lay a block. They are good at run blocking. If you look at his reaction after, so we're back to the Drew Aller swing pass. If you look at his reaction after the pass, it definitely looks like it was Drew's fault. It looks like he was trying to short arm it for accuracy, like he's afraid to just throw the football. Again, we're going to look at it two different ways. I look at that, the way I actually translate it myself is, I'm a fourth-year quarterback, you're a fourth-year running back, we need to be on the same page. That's how I translate that, as, oh my goodness, we just missed an easy third down conversion. Who knows, maybe a touchdown, at the minimum of an explosive play, because we are not on the same page for a 5-yard pass. This isn't a wheel route down the sideline in double coverage. This is a wide open swing pass 5 yards away. Why don't we have this figured out when we've been on the same team for 4 years? That's how I interpret that. Well, then Franklin needs to be gone. It is a coaching issue when your team doesn't, but it's just kind of, I think you're referring to back that Penn State isn't getting up for the likes of FIU compared to an Oregon and other teams within the Big Ten. Like, it's just kind of it's just the natural attrition of college football. We're not in a situation where no one's made a comment about Florida. Again, Florida, I know we're comparing Penn State as a national title contending team to Florida as nothing now. Looking for a new head coach, probably sooner rather than later. And so it's apples to oranges, but no situation like that where Penn State is on upset watch. We're critiquing a performance that could have and should have been better. Let's see. I like James Franklin, but his going for it on fourth down during the first drive deep inside our own territory is just dumb. He's still stuck in Vanderbilt. Will he do the same against Oregon? I don't know if he's still stuck in Vanderbilt. That's how I read that. That's how I read that comment. I hope that I'm interpreting that correctly. You trust your defense in that situation? Do they need to punt? They gave up 0 points. Does Penn State? You want your offense on the football field. Why would you want to willingly give FIU back the football? Against Oregon, completely different story. Punt that football away and pin them inside the 10. Okay? But when you know you are that much better than FIU, you can do those things. You're allowed to go for it on fourth down at the 50 or at your own 45, whatever have you, because you know, okay, my defense is going to figure it out anyway. We're not going to give up any points, and if we do, we'll get it back. Right decision. Totally agree with what James Franklin saying. Yeah, we go for, because it didn't lead to anything negative. It didn't lead to a bad play. It didn't lead to more points for FIU. Penn State's defense stopped them, and that's why James Franklin did what he did, because He knew, okay, my defense is going to take care of it. So I can try a couple different things. I can tell Andy Kotelnicki, hey, do what you want here. Do you want to go for it on fourth down? Do you have a play call? James isn't, and again, I won't spend too much time on this because I see more comments and I want to continue some other conversations, around this, but James Franklin isn't meddling as much as people will be led to believe. He makes he will talk to Kotelnicki, but there's not all this time to say, I want you to run this play, go for it on fourth down. It's, hey Andy, talk to me. Do you have a play for fourth down right now? Because if you can, we'll go for it. Yes. Okay. It's all you. That's that communication. It's not, I want you to run this play with this player and do this. There's 25 seconds for them to do that. So there's just not as much Franklin meddling as you think there is in certain aspects of the game. There are times where Penn State's been outcoached. I understand that, but it's not this all or nothing. Oh, it's all Franklin's fault. It's all this, it's all that. No, that's not it. That's not entirely the case. There's a lot of other nuances that make it one way, but we can only cast judgment on, did this happen? Yes or no? I think it just ruins the deep ball opportunities, to be honest. See, some of the comments come in late, so I'm not sure what that's ultimately referring to. My apologies. If you want to add some clarity, if you're still in the live chat, Alex, please feel free to add some clarity to that. So you're telling me the generational talent with an amazing arm isn't trusted to throw a deep ball because I see plenty of QBs making those throws. I mean, he's trusted to throw the deep ball. He hit Devontae Ross in the back of the end zone today. He hit Kyron Hudson a week ago. They know. It's a high percentage play. That's how I look at it. It is a higher percentage play to give the receiver an opportunity to come down with the football as opposed to him chasing it. Okay. That's how Penn State's looking at it. Again, I said that it will disgruntle Penn State fans. They're not going to like that. And I get it. But I don't know what I'm supposed to do differently to say what they're wrong. They shouldn't do that. They can't do that. It hasn't led to an interception. At least I don't think it has. Point back to where the Drew Aller moon ball hasn't led to either it's an incomplete pass, it's a heck of a catch by a receiver, or it's a touchdown, or it's a pass interference. It's not leading to turnovers, and that's what Penn State's trying. Penn State is trying to do specific things. Win the penalty battle, win the explosive play battle, win the turnover battle. That goes into the turnover battle because it's a high percentage play to where you don't turn the football over. Trying to see. Coaching was sloppy. Again, the game plan was very vanilla, and this team came out flat. So yes, that's on coaching and that's on senior leadership. They should have been better. Yes, we can all agree that and that's what Penn State's trying to do in this non-conference schedule, build the depth because we know what the starters can do. Chaz Coleman is a player. He is a dude. He's 18 years old, and he's been playing defensive end for maybe a collective total of 9 months. He did not enroll early. For Coleman to be at this point in time speaks volumes to Coleman as a player and his potential, Deion Barnes as the defensive line coach. And Jalen Harvey did improve. I will agree with that. Jalen Harvey showed me more this week than he did last week. I have confidence and optimism for Jalen Harvey. I definitely think the line played better today, made some great holes for the running backs to hit, but they seem to be missing those holes a little today. Singleton in particular. I think that Allen had 144 rushing yards. He did great. He did phenomenal. And Singleton almost averaged 6 yards per carry. That's not going to matter to people because of a couple missed opportunities for bigger chunk plays, but he didn't have a terrible day. And neither of them fumbled. Again, we're focusing on some small miscues here and there that can be corrected and we're not looking at glaring issues like fumbleitis or things like that. They had 30 carries for 209 yards for 6.7 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns. And if you take out Drew Aller, the Singleton and Allen combined for 29 carries for 220 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's a darn good day to me. That's a great day. Okay? He missed one rushing lane. It's kind of, at that point, it's like, so what? Like, they're still doing the things that they're expected to do. Drew seemed to be staring down one player today a lot instead of going through his reads in the first half, and the offense seemed to be lacking fire. They're playing flat a lot and no physicality. Again, that goes back to that Penn State, I just think, has bigger fish to fry. They know what's at stake here. A Big Ten championship is on the table. A college football playoff national title berth on the table. You got to beat Oregon. You got to beat Ohio State. I get the 1-0 mantra. I do, but Oregon, you have that in a few weeks. Let's point to some of the positives here, right? Penn State is 2-0. Penn State is still in the running for a national title. Penn State is not injured. We're not talking about any injuries. How does the depth chart look? When's this player going to come back? Is Penn State going to be able to? We're not talking about any of that. Penn State turned the ball over. This issue. No. We are criticizing miscues from a shutout and a 46-11 win over Nevada in week 1. So I like this. This is easy. This is stress-free. All of this is stress-free. Oh, Penn State, hey, let's critique some details here and there from a 34-0 game. Okay. My counterpart at Locked On Gators is probably going through it right now. Oh my goodness. We don't have that. We don't have that issue. We can say, hey, they got to be better. They got to clean this up here and there. I'll have those conversations every single day of the week because I know it means that Penn State is moving in the right direction. This team's moving in the right direction. For the most part, again, I know Max Granville's not available, Caden Saunders, and Josiah Brown, and I'm sure there's probably some other select reserve players that we just don't know about because they don't play a lot, but the starters are all healthy. This group is winning. They're winning the games, and they're in a good position to go up against the likes of Ohio State and Oregon. We'll see what ultimately happens on game day, but Penn State is in that position. Okay. I think that's where I'm going to have to call it. 1 hour and 20 minutes. If you stayed for the whole hour and 20, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That means you are a true supporter of the show, and you mean a lot to me. If you joined later on in the show, or this is the first time you're here at Locked On Nittany Lions, welcome. Welcome to each and every one of you. We do this daily. Okay, we talk about this team daily. You will get daily content around Penn State football. For the wrestling fans that are here as well, I know it's mostly a football audience. You are going to get podcasts. You are going to get press conferences. You are going to get interviews. You are going to get content centered around Penn State football, wrestling, basketball, recruiting, hockey. We didn't even talk about how Penn State got a defensive tackle commit for the class of 2026. And a good one. Tavian Branch, who I talked about, if you were here this season, if you were here in the off season, Brian Smith, who's is the recruiting expert here in the Locked On Podcast Network. We said that of all prospects that Penn State could and should flip, Tavian Branch should be one of them. I know it's not technically a flip because he decommitted from Rutgers, but I will count it as a flip because he's been decommitted for a week, and Penn State secured that commitment just like that when Oklahoma is there. An offer out to Notre Dame, but I was hearing that Oklahoma was making a strong push, and that really could have went down to the wire there. So Penn State got this taken care of after a week's time, if that, maybe 2 weeks max. And that's a really good interior defensive line prospect that if he continues to develop, he is underrated right now as a 3-star. When the rankings finalize, he will be a solid 4-star and a phenomenal addition to the class of 2026. Good on Deion Barnes. Very good on Deion Barnes. Very good on Penn State to add another defensive lineman to this group because they certainly needed it for 2026. All right. I think that's where we have to end it. We're pushing. I didn't get to watch any of the Michigan, Oklahoma game. I want to do some scouting, even though Penn State's not going to play them this season. Maybe they play them in the Big Ten championship, right? That's a possibility. Or in the playoff. Well, I shouldn't go that far. I don't know that. I never had Michigan as that good of a team. I think of Illinois that way. I actually think Nebraska is closer to that breakthrough than Michigan is this season. Some of that has to do with scheduling favorability, and we'll find out very soon. Nebraska is going to play Michigan, for example. Okay, so Oklahoma's up 14-7. Not shocking. I did pick Michigan. I thought Michigan would win decisively because I still do like Michigan's, and this game's only a 7-point deficit. But I think that's impressive that a true freshman quarterback in his first road start against an SEC team, of all places, and an unfamiliar just Oklahoma team, is only down by 7 at halfway through this game. So, UCLA is not a good football team this year. And I don't know why anybody tried to convince me otherwise, because they are in a massive rebuild. Okay, I could go on about college football, about the Big Ten. I appreciate each and every one of you. Like I said, we do this daily. This is great to connect with you, the fan, the viewer, the listener. So let's do more of these, okay? More of this, just these sit downs, these chats, these fireside chats, where we just go back and forth and we spitball about Penn State and college football. I like this. I enjoyed this. A little more casual, a little away from the routine, but we're still going to do the routine. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not already. Become an everydayer. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, if you need to take us on the go and listen when you can't view. And we do, like I said, we do this daily, so there will be more content around Penn State football, all your favorite Penn State sports teams here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Have a great night.